What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG TCG video. Today, guys, we're going to be doing something a little bit different than I normally do on this channel. Now, I've done quite a bit of this segment on the channel for a good amount of time. I think I've had like 7 or 8 of this. I don't remember the actual count of it, but I've done quite a bit of these OCG TCG videos. But today, it's going to be different as I'm going to be going over a brand new archetype coming, and I think it was like the deck building set for Rush's Ancient Guardians, I believe was the name. That is a recent pack that's going to be coming out in the OCG. Now, I say a new archetype, and I've done it before. I've covered Spectre, Sun Avalon cards coming into that, and that was a brand new archetype for the TCG and the OCG. However, this one is different as this archetype, the Bearcti archetype, that's the way I'm going to be calling it. Or I believe there was another name for this archetype. I can't remember what it is, but I'll probably get it when I actually go into the discussion. But the Bearcti archetype has never appeared in either the anime or the manga. So technically this is my second time on this channel discussing something that is not in regards to the anime or the manga. The first one being the Chumbesta video. Now both of them, because the second one that I did, I talked about like Jinzo and Celtic Guardian, so they technically fall in that category in the anime because I did kind of talk about the anime in that video. But this one is going to be a pure just card game related thing, nothing regarding the anime or manga. Well, I say that until the end because I want to kind of discuss something with this archetype closer to the end of the video, but I'll get into that when we get to that point. So I'm very excited. This is something very new that I don't really do on the channel, and I really want to do a lot more of this stuff. You know, I do a lot of this stuff on the anime or manga, but I'm a Yu-Gi tuber. I'm a guy that plays Yu-Gi-Oh! I love the game, and I want to just talk more than just the anime and the manga. That's how I've always presented my channel, or I'm trying to present my channel as not just an anime or manga channel. I want to do it for the TCG and the OCG, for the games as well. That's why I covered that Jump Vesta video, because of the game. Because honestly, I would not have covered it without the game, honestly. Because even though those cards were cool, I wasn't comfortable yet doing something that was in regards to the card game. Or I wasn't comfortable doing something in towards the card game at the time that I was at, but 2021 is now here. I have a full year to be doing different types of content, and this is something that I want to do on this channel. So I'm very excited to be getting into this, so let's not waste any more time. This was a very long intro, but I wanted to get it all out of the way, and let's get right into it. So, normally what I do for this segment is I normally go over the extra deck monsters, the monsters, and then the spell and trap cards. However, this time I'm actually going to switch it, and I purposely am going to be doing this because I want to discuss them a little later on after I talk about these monsters. That way everything kind of fits and makes sense. So, I'm going to be doing the monster first, then extra monsters, and then we'll do the spell and trap cards. So, let's get right into it. Also, the sub name for this is Ursarctic. Ursarctic. I'm probably butchering that name completely, but I'm going to be calling it Bearcti anyway, so yeah, whatever. So the first monster we're going to be going over is Bearcti McPolar. It is a level 7 water beast effect monster, and its effect is you can only use each of the first and second effects of this card once per turn. During either main phase quick effect, you can tribute one other level 7 or higher monster in your hand, special summon this card from your hand. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can only special summon monsters with a level. So that is something that you're going to be noticing with this deck, is that this deck is not going to really be useful towards Xyz monsters or Link monsters. I feel like if you want to get the full force of this, it's probably not the best option to run it. Now, you can still run them, but before you actually can start using your Bearcti monsters, you have to get those Link monsters or your Xyz monsters on the field. Because once you summon one of these and you use its first effect, you're locked into summoning stuff with a level. So that would be just a warning if you ever play this in a deck and you want to Xyz and Link with this deck. And I'll mention this too, the first effect for all of the monsters of the main deck are the same effect, so I'm not going to be reading the first effect of all of these cards. I'm just going to only be reading the second effects. The second effect, if discard a special summon, you can add one Bearcti monster from your deck to your hand, except Bearcti McPolar. So it's a free searcher for one of your Bearcti monster. I think that's a pretty good effect. That way you're able to search your cards so you can go into different types of combos. And to me, it seems like a pretty interesting card. I also like it. It looks like this, like, almost like robotic kind of, I don't know, it's a robotic bear. Basically, I've been hearing people compare this to like a mecha bear almost in a way, and it looks like he kind of is surfing, and I think it looks pretty cool. But that is the first monster we went over of McPolar. I really do like this monster. It's a good searcher, but let's see the next one. Up next, we got Bearcti Mectanius. It is a level 7 water beast effect monster. You can only use each of the first and second effects of this card once per turn. This is also going to be the same thing, but I'm just going to skip down to the second one. If this card is special summoned, you can target one Bearcti monster in your graveyard, except Ursarctic Mectanius. Oh, I just read that. Bearcti Magnanius, I don't know how the heck you're supposed to say that, and add it to your hand. So this kind of correlates with how their first effect really works. So basically you're not losing anything, you get a free level 7 summon, basically, because like I said with the other one, you tribute one other monster, a level 7 or higher monster in your hand, and guess what? You summon this monster, you can basically just gain the card back, and you just summoned a free level 7 monster, which I think is actually not that bad, especially when we get into the Synchro monsters a little bit later, because this is an easy way to get into that. So I think this is a pretty cool effect in that you're not honestly losing anything, but you're not, well, I guess you're not gaining anything because you're not searching something, but you're getting something back from the graveyard. And even like, you don't even need to get the card you sent back. You can literally get any other card. In fact, you can play this with like a deck where, since they have this effect of sending cards from your hands to the graveyard, I can see a lot of graveyard effects going off with this. Like, you can be adding the Bearcti monsters that you want, and then you can be sending monsters with pretty good graveyard effects to your graveyard, and you can probably pull off some pretty insane combos, I feel like. So, this archetype, I might be useful with the whole sending a card to your graveyard to be able to summon it. So, we'll just have to see what happens with it, but that is it for Bearcti Mectanius. Next one on the list, we got Bearcti McBills. It is a level 7 water beast effect monster, and same as the other ones, you can only use this first and second effect once per turn. Second effect, if this card is special summoned, you can special summon one Bearcti monster from your hand, except Bearcti McBillis. So it's basically a free special summon, and I feel like that's good because of the fact that you can be able to summon a monster. Like, this is just looking a little bit later on, but you summon this monster, and say you get, actually it's in the next one we will discuss, and you get Bearcti Megapolar, which is a tuner monster, and then you can go into this Bearcti Synchro summon, I will say with quotation marks, because again, I'll talk about that when we actually get to the Synchro monsters, because this has a very unique way that you Synchro summon, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But it's a good special summoner, I feel like. And yeah, that's it for actually the main monsters, like the irregular effect monsters, as the next one we're going to go into is actually a tuner monster. So let's not waste time, and let's get right into it. Alright, the first tuner we're going to go over is Bearcti Megapolar. It is a level 8 Water Beast Warrior tuner effect monster, and you can only use each of the first and second effects of this card once per turn, and it has the same effect as the first one, so the tuner monster has the same as the regular one. The second effect, if this card is special summoned while you control another Bearcti monster, you can target a spell and trap card your opponent controls and destroy it. So basically, you get to destroy a back row, and I think that's actually pretty decent. It is, and I don't think, no, it's the first for turn effect because of the first effect. So you basically get to destroy a spell card on the field, which I don't think is that bad at all. I feel like being able to get rid of back row, especially since recently in the game you see a lot of trap cards actually being played recently, because you know it's kind of, the game is kind of calmed down a little bit after some banning of some cards. In fact, some cards being brought back kind of helps trap card is going to be a little bit more prominent in this. So being able to destroy a trap card that you're pretty worried about, I feel like that's not a bad effect to have at all. And the next one we got is Bearcti Megatanius. It is the same level Beast War Return effect monster, so I probably shouldn't have done this for the other ones, but all of the effect monsters are level 7, while the tune monsters are level 8. I probably shouldn't have done it that way, but hey, you know what? What happens? The second effect. If this card is special summoned while you control another Bearcti monster, you can target one monster your opponent controls, flip it face down. I mean, it's an okay effect. Flip something in the face down. I mean, you're not destroying a monster. I think I don't know. Because flipping a monster face down, they can't use their effects because obviously in their face down defense position, but you can't actually be able to attack them directly, and that is the case. So it's probably it's weaker than the first one, I believe. But honestly, if flipping a monster face down and you're not having to deal with the monster's effects, I think would be pretty good. And also, because normally a lot of the monsters have lower defense, so if you're dealing with a monster that has too high of an attack points, you can flip this to face down defense position, and then maybe you can go and attack, and you can be able to destroy that pesky monster. Just hopefully you're not playing against a Subterror deck. That would be very dangerous, because that is a whole... no, I think it was Super Behemoths, I think is what I was thinking of. I think that's what the names are. They're flip effect monsters. So I guess the flip effect deck, it might not be the best, but hey, you know what? Getting the chance to maybe destroy a monster that you've been having a problem with by destroying it with a lower defense points, excuse me, might be pretty useful in the long run. I have no idea, but definitely is the weaker one, honestly, in my opinion. But honestly, it's a decent effect, I believe. And the last one we're going to go over is Bearcti Megabilis, and it is the same levels. And let's just go into second effect. I don't need to read that again. If this card is special summoned while you control another Bear-type monster, you can target card in your opponent's graveyard, banish. No, you can target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. Hey, that might get... Like I mentioned before, with graveyard effects been pretty prominent for a while now, being able to get rid of something in the graveyard actually is not really that bad at all. I feel like just being able to get rid of a pesky card in the graveyard that can banish itself and gain an upper hand for your opponents, and being able to get rid of that, I don't think it's really that bad of an effect at all. And that is it for the main monsters. I think they all are pretty cool monsters, but let's get into probably what you guys were waiting for from the thumbnail of this video. Let's go over the level 1 Synchro monster. I'm very excited to get into this discussion. And the level 1 tuner monster is called Bearcti Polari. It's a Beast Synchro effect monster, and it's level 1. Now, if anyone knows how Synchro summoning works, normally you add the levels of a monster to get your Synchro monster. Say, for example, you want to summon Stardust Dragon as a level 8, so you have a level 5 tuner monster and a level 3 monster. 5 plus 3 equals 8, you're able to go into Synchro summon. However, level 1 is impossible, you would think, because you can't add up to 1. There is no level 0 monsters in the game, and the lowest that we knew of that you could do was a level 2 because of a 1+1. However, with the Bearcti archetype, this changes the whole concepts of how you do Synchro summoning. So let's get into its effect. Cannot be Synchro summoned. Must be special summoned from your extra deck by sending one tuner and one non-tuner monster you control to the graveyard whose level have a difference of 1. So this whole archetype focuses around in terms of the Synchro monsters, the difference of the levels. So instead of adding the monsters levels, you compare the difference, and whatever that difference is, it is how you summon this monster. And I will mention that all of the Synchro monsters for the Bearcti archetype have this effect, so they cannot normally be Synchro summoned, which does suck because you can't use the normal way, but I don't think it's really that hard to really do this, because even though you're fighting the difference, I don't see it being that hard of a monster to summon. And this also poses the question that, could this potentially mean that we might have a level 0 Synchro monster in the future? I'm dead serious about this. I mean, we've had rank 0 Xyz monsters. One I think at the top of my head was number S0 Utopic Zexal. That was a rank 0. Number Future 0 Utopic Future was also a rank 0 monster. And also we had rank 13s as well, but other than that, we haven't really had anything that has no level, rank, or link. I mean, link monsters could technically have a link 0, but they're useless at that point because they rely on their link markers, so I don't know how the heck that will work. But I can still see a level 0 synchro monster actually being a potential thing with this archetype, because you're finding the difference. So you can find a level 4 monster and a level 4 tuner monster, and since the difference is 0, you can maybe summon a Bearcti level 0 monster if that ever comes out. I don't know if they'll do that, but I think that would be pretty cool. So that's going into the effect. That was just a weird little tangent. You can only use each of the first and second effects of this card once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can activate one Bearcti Big Dipper from your deck, which, if you guys, I haven't discussed yet, but the Big Dipper is the field spell for this archetype. So this is basically, this kind of reminds me of Salamangreat Balinx, where it's able to, with Balinx's effect, it's able to search for Salamangreat's field spell. So in this case, it is the same way in terms of how its effect works. I feel like this monster just looks, I feel like this almost looks like an opposite of Balinx, because they kind of look like machine type monsters, but this is more focused around ice, and Balinx is more focused on, you know, fire. So I think that's pretty cool, like, comparison there. And the second effect, you contribute one level 7 or higher monster you control. Take one Bearcti monster from your graveyard and either add it to your hand or special summon it. So you tribute a pretty high leveled Bearcti monster, which all of them are high level. So you tribute one of them and you get to search any monster you want from your graveyard. And this does not, well, I guess it does limit, I don't think you could still do the synchros because they have to be special summoned by the effect so that you can't get them out of the graveyard. So that kind of hurts the deck, if I'm thinking about it right. And maybe you can still do it. Like, maybe you could target the card in your graveyard and add it back to your extra deck, but I don't think you can special summon it, because it said it cannot be special summoned. It must be summoned from your extra deck. So it can't work with synchro monsters, which sucks, I will be honest. I feel like it would have been way better if you can also target your synchro monsters as well with this effect. But you can still target other monsters so you can go in your bigger place. In fact, a pretty easy combo that you can do is, say you have Polari on the field and you're able to summon, let's say you summon Bearcti Megabilis. You can go into the other synchro monsters, because the other synchro monsters are level 7. I'll add real quick. They all have the same effect like I just mentioned, where you have to find the difference. So with Megabilis being a level 8 and Polari being a level 1, the difference is 7, and you can summon either of the two synchro monsters because of the fact that they are both level 7. So that's a good way to get into your higher monsters, so I don't see it as that bad of effect. I wish you could be able to search these cards from the graveyard as well, but hey, there's nothing you can really do about that. But let's go into the two big boss monsters, I would say, of this deck. And the first one we're going to go over, and it's actually the one on the thumbnail, and that is Bearcti Septentrion. Septentrion, I believe that's how you say the name of it. It cannot be synchro summoned. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by sending one level 8 or higher tuner monster or one non-tuner synchro. Oh, this one specifically says synchro monster, so you have to use Polari in order to summon this. I actually didn't notice it the first time I read it. I just assumed that you can use any tuner or any normal monster, because it says non-tuner synchro, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is with Polari, because it's the only level 1 synchro monster. But you guys get the points. And whose level is different from 7. You can only use the second effect of this card once per turn. So the first one you can use multiple times. Negate the effects of face-up monsters without levels that were special summoned for the extra deck. This is a massive effect. So this deck can affect Xyz and Lynx. And I think this is actually pretty important, because if we get more support on this, I can see this actually being a meta contender, and I think we get some really good support on it. I really do see that, because one of the top decks right now, and it's an archetype you guys have probably never heard of if you're not equivalent with the OCG or TCG meta, is a deck called Drytron. It's an archetype that never was in the anime or manga either. It is one of the top decks right now in the competitive game, and it is an Xyz focused deck. So if we can get some pretty good support with the Bearcti monsters, they could potentially slow down this Drytron archetype, because it is a very strong deck, and being able to lock your opponent out of effects with Xyz monsters and Lynx, I think can really slow that archetype down. If there is more support. I don't think with all the support that we got, or at least I don't know yet, because I haven't tested this myself, so I can't really say anything on it, but I feel like this deck definitely needs quite a bit more support and some pretty good support to even tackle Drytrons. Drytrons are very powerful, so you really need to get some good support for this deck, but I really do love that effect. And the second effect is, if your opponent special summons a monster, or monsters, quick effect, you can add one Bearcti monster from your deck to your hand. Another way to search your Bearcti monsters to potentially go into maybe the other one of this deck, which we'll get into in just a second. So it's a good searcher. I feel like if you can search any card, it's better, but hey, searching a Bearcti monster, being able to use this effect to maybe summon another monster, like I can see a pretty good combo with this where, and say this was your turn and you already had this monster on the field. You activate its second effect, you add one of the Bearcti monsters, you activate its effect, you get another Bearcti. Like, for an example of this, maybe you can use something like Bearcti, I believe it was Mectanius, I believe that was the one that can summon from your graveyard. So say you send Megabilis to your graveyard and you had this monster in the field. You bring that back, summon another Polari, activate its second effect to get back another monster, and then you can immediately go into another level 7 monster, whether it's the same copy of this card or the other one that I'll be mentioning or later. So it's a good way to combo off into another Synchro summon if you have the right cards. So I see you can do some pretty good things with it. I mean, deck searchers I love. I feel like deck searchers are pretty good when it comes to it. I feel like anyone with any card with a deck searching effect, especially for that archetype, I feel like people are going to run multiple copies of it, because why not? You're searching cards from your deck to play your combos. Why wouldn't you do it? So I love this monster. I think it has a really cool design, and I think it has some pretty good effects. So really happy about this monster. I put it on the thumbnail because I really did like this. This is probably my favorite monster out of the entire set. So let's go over the last one. Let's give the other ones some love. And the last monster we're going to be going over is Bearcti Grand Shario? I believe that's how you say that. It is a level 7 Beast Warrior. It has the same effects. Its first effect, if this card is special summon, you can target up to 2 other cards on the field and destroy them. So back when the other monster that can destroy a spell or trap card, this one can destroy any card in the field, and in fact, you can destroy 2 of them. So being able to get rid of 2 cards in your opponent's field, I think is actually pretty solid to be able to maybe get rid of a tricky board, and destroying some of the pieces to that board could really help you in the long run, or even in that scenario to try to be able to do something towards your opponent. So I think that one is a pretty good effect. And the second one is once per turn quick effect. If a card effect activates by targeting a Bearcti card / cards you control, you contribute 1 monster, negate the activation. So in order to be able to negate effects, you have to have Bearcti monsters on your field, but honestly that's really not that bad of an effect either, especially since it's very easy to get Bearcti monsters on the field. Like I just mentioned before, if you didn't want to go in that Synchro something, and say you had both this card and that Sceptron onto the field, I believe I said that name right. If I said it wrong, I apologize. And you're able to pull off that combo like I mentioned earlier, and you're able to get the 2 monsters instead of going for the polarized summon, you can have basically 3 tributes to be able to negate 3 card effects, which I don't think is that bad at all. Being able to negate as many effects as you can, well, it's a once per turn, so actually you can't do it that way. I was thinking wrong, but it's very easy to summon Bearcti monsters, so I don't see this effect being a problem. I wish it wasn't a once per turn, but I thought it was a once per turn. I read that wrong. I do apologize for that if I made people confused on what the heck I was going on. But once per turn effect kind of does hurt this effect, I actually think now, because originally when I read this, I thought it was a very good effect. But hey, I hate once per turn, especially when it comes to this, because you're getting rid of something on the field, but it's a destroying of a card effect that could probably damage your board, so it's not really that bad. I would have loved if it wasn't a once per turn effect, but probably would have been broken if that was the case, especially since how easy Bearcti monsters are to summon. But overall, I still think this was a pretty cool monster, and I do think it's weaker than the first one that I mentioned, but I think it still has some very good potential to be useful in this Bearcti archetype. Now we can get into the spells and traps, and the first spell we'll go over is the quick play spell, Bearcti Strider. You can only activate this card once per turn. Target one of your Bearcti monsters that is banished or in the graveyard, special summon it, but it cannot attack and destroy it in the end phase. Also, for the rest of the turn, you can only special summon monster for level. Another monster that kind of negates you being able to play Xyz and Link monsters, which obviously you don't really want to do it in this deck. It's a pretty interesting effect, being able to get back a card from your graveyard. I don't see it's really that bad. It cannot attack, and it's destroyed during the end phase, but I feel like if you're going to get the best out of this card, probably your best thing to do is activate this card, return something from your graveyard, and then try to be able to summon another Bearcti monster, probably the tuner monster or whatever monster you need, depending on the monster you special summon, and go into your Synchro summon. That's the best way you're going to get anything out of this card. So it's not that bad. It's a potential to be able to get a pretty easy Synchro summon on the field because you're summoning a monster from your graveyard, and then you can just have a free summon to summon something else. So yeah, I don't think it's really that bad of an effect, to be completely honest. And that is it for the quick play spell, and that's actually getting to the field spell of this archetype. And the field spell is Bearcti Big Dipper. I did mention this with Polarize, that is the field spell for this archetype, and it has 3 effects. The first one, once per turn, if you were to tribute a monster to activate a Bearcti monster's effect, you can banish one level 7 or higher Bearcti monster from your graveyard instead. Okay, so that actually makes some more variety when it comes to the one that I mentioned earlier, the I believe it's called like Grand Sorario or something like that. So instead of having to target monsters on your field, which I feel like with them being a special summon, you can do it anyways, but banishing it from your graveyard is not that bad. And also you can combine this with the spell card I mentioned earlier to be able to bring that back onto the field and maybe potential go into another Synchro summon. So the first effect I don't think is that bad at all. The second one, place 1 counter on this card each time a monster is special summoned. Okay, this is probably going to gain a lot of counters. Once per turn, if a monster is special summoned, you can remove all counters from this card, minimum 7. Oh, that is a lot of counters you got to get. But to be fair, most of this deck you're going to be special summoning because that's the only way you can really summon this. You can't actually normal summon these monsters because they're way too high of a level. So having to have 7 counters makes sense, but that's a lot of counters you gotta get. And that's the minimum amount of counters you have to do, and you have to remove all of them. So that's pretty interesting. Then target 1 monster your opponent controls. Take control of it. There must be a Bearcti Synchro monster on the field to activate this effect. Okay, I didn't like that limitation to having a monster on the field, but being able to take control of an opponent's monster, that is not a bad effect at all. Not only does that destroy your opponent's board, like say you're able to destroy their boss monster, and you're able to take control of it, and then potentially you could either use it for yourself or go into your place, like maybe a Synchro summon. Say, for example, your opponent has a level 7 monster onto the field. You can bring that card to your field and be able to go into Synchro Summon, and guess what? You just destroyed his monster because it had to be sent to the graveyard for that special summon. Now, you're probably not going to do this because that's very situational in that regards, but being able to take control of an opponent's monster, it's not that bad, but I feel like having to have 7 counters just to activate it does make it a little bit slower of a pace to do it. I see people really doing this close towards like the middle of the game or closer to the end of the game because you're not going to gain counters that fast. I really don't feel like. I feel like the most you're going to get out of it in terms of that effect is probably 4 because you can get the 2 special summon monsters onto the field, get Polarize. Oh, actually, no, 5 because you can resummon a monster and then go into your big boss monster. So I guess it's actually not that bad to get into that. So you can take control of it pretty early now thinking about it. So I don't think this effect is really that bad at all. I really do not believe that. But now let's go into the only trap card in this deck. And that trap card is Bearcti Quint Charge. It is a continuous trap. Once per turn, you can pay 700 life points, apply one of the following effects. I just thought of Imperial Order by just reading that first that condition. I really did. The first one is add 1 Bearcti monster from your graveyard to the hand. Interesting, you can be able to add a card to your hand to go in your combo, so I see that pretty useful. The second one, tribute 2 Bearcti monsters, and if you do, special summon 1 Bearcti monster from your extra deck whose levels equal the difference of the 2 tribute monsters, ignoring their summoning conditions. So you can tribute 2 Bearcti monsters and if you do special summon. what is the point of that? I mean, that second effect, wouldn't you just do it anyway? Because in order to synchro summon, you have to do the difference thing. So, never mind. I need to just read it more. So basically, you just tribute to the monsters, and you get the synchro monster. It doesn't look like you don't really need to focus on the levels. So, never mind. That's not as bad as an effect as I thought it would. But to be honest, if you're just building a pure Bearcti monster, I feel like it's kind of useless because you can do that anyway by being able to do it, and you have to tribute the monsters, and the only way you can tribute is having monsters on your field. So you're gonna have the monsters on the field anyway. What's the point? Unless you have like 2 tuner monsters onto the field, so then you can maybe do that. But you still have to equal the difference anyway, so what's the point? What is the actual point? And this strictly resides to Bearcti monsters, so you can't like combine this with a mixture deck and be able to go into the synchro summon. So I feel like that second effect is kind of useless because you do it anyway. I don't see what the point of that effect is, but maybe that's just me and I'm not seeing its real value. But honestly, I don't see myself really using it unless Bearctis are kind of restricted doing that, but I don't know. And it's the second effect of it is when your Bearcti Synchro monster is destroyed by battle by your opponent's attack, you can make your opponent shuffle cards from their hand, deck, and graveyard until total number of cards among them equals 7. What? That is a weird effect. I don't know how to feel about that. So when your Bearcti monster is destroyed by battle, which, by the way, it has to be your opponent's attack, so you can't use, like, a card effect to destroy it. You can make your opponent shuffle cards from their hand, deck, and graveyard until the number of cards among them equals 7. Oh, so you could... Okay, I was reading the effect wrong. So you can target 7 cards either from their hand, deck, or not hand, deck, hand, field, or graveyard, and shuffle them into the deck. That is a very interesting effect. So, it's a good way to get rid of the board. I mean, I think it would be better if you could banish them, but I think that would be way too broken if you did that, because all this is going to do is they have to send the cards back to the graveyard, and then they have to just try to research to get their field back on there. So I guess it depends on the situation. I feel like if your opponent can't really do well in getting their cards back, say like they don't have the resources anymore to be able to search for their cards as easily as they did probably at the beginning of the turn, then I could see that very beneficial. But if they can still be able to get their cards back by multiple effects, I feel like that's just a one-turn stall just to be able to maybe do something to your opponent before your field gets destroyed or something like that. So it's an interesting effect. I think it's pretty decent when you look at it. I think that it depends on your situation, but that is just a weird effect. I don't remember reading something like that. Let me know if there's a card similar to this, because I cannot think of a card that has effect like that. I mean, there's been cards before where you have to shuffle cards from your deck or from your graveyard to your deck. There's been cards before where you have to shuffle cards to your deck, but I don't think they've ever went something like that, or at least I can't think of. Now, I don't memorize every card in the game, so that probably is the case, but that was a weird effect. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even read the spell and trap cards until this video, because when I looked it up and looked at the monsters, the spell and trap cards didn't come with it, which was very weird. I don't know why they weren't with it, but this was the first time reading those, and that was like the weirdest one out of them all. Like, out of all the effects that I've read, that one was definitely the weirdest one, and it's all because of that second effect. And also, I think it's a little bit on the on the lesser side, is because of how you have to do it. Your opponent has to attack in order to do it. So if they are able to destroy your opponent's monsters by card effects, you cannot use this. There's no point. You won't be able to activate it. And if they destroy this trap, there's no point. Well, obviously, if they destroy this trap, there's no point. So I feel like putting it to the point where it has to be destroyed by an opponent's attack, I feel like just makes it a little bit weaker, but it's a very interesting card nevertheless. I don't know how many more times I have to say that. This is a card I'm definitely going to test out, because I really want to see how this effect really works, because I've never played a deck with an effect like that. And I've played a couple of decks in my spare time, but I've never played a card like that. So that's a pretty interesting card nevertheless. And that was my thoughts on the Bearcti archetype. Now, before I end off this video, I'm going to mention one quick thing about this archetype. We'll give an overall view of this real quick. I love the archetype. I think it's really cool. I love all the design of the monsters. I think they look really cool. These kind of like bear mecha machine type monsters. I think they look really sick. My favorite one being the Synchro monster that I put on the cover of this thumbnail, Septentrion. I believe that's, I might never be able to pronounce that name, but that was probably my favorite one out of them all. I think my least favorite card out of probably all of them, I think, was Megatanius, I believe, was the one that I was thinking of. I just feel like, no, maybe it's honestly the trap card. The trap card is a little bit too weird for me. I feel like I need to test that card out for myself to see if that has anything, so I have to wait until Ancient Guardians, unless I play it online, to really test that. But I'm excited to test this archetype for myself. This deck has a lot of potential, I feel like, to be in a meta, especially since if we could get some really good support for this deck, like I mentioned earlier, this can stop Drytrons. I really do think they have a potential of stopping that deck if you can get some very good support. And maybe there's some cards in the real life game that can be able to make these cards even easier, and maybe some cards that can really be useful, whether it be because of its attribute, which I'm pretty sure this was just a water-based attribute deck. I mean, it makes sense. They're more like, they're polar bears than anything. I shouldn't say bears, they're polar bears. And polar bears don't really live in the Antarctic, closer to water, so it makes sense that they're water, because obviously there's not an ice type. But it can maybe do it, maybe you can get some cards that would be easier for like the attributes, some like support maybe for Beast Wars as well, maybe can be good incorporation to this deck. And I feel like this deck has some potential. We just need more cards for this deck. Now, I want to pose, anytime that I do something with these newer archetypes, I'm going to ask this question. And this is where I want you guys to answer this down below. Do you guys think that Bearcti monsters will be in OCG structures? Yes, I cannot do this video without having to cover them, but this is an honest-to-God question, because if you guys have not been following me on the channel for that long, I do OCG structure reviews. I'm currently have done 9 chapters. Well, I technically covered 10. 3.5 was technically a special chapter, so I've covered 10 chapters in the manga already. I'm about to start chapter 10 later on today, actually. I'm going to go and record that after I go and read it, and then we'll get that thing edited and hopefully get this out today. I don't know when it's going to get out, but do you guys think that this archetype can potentially be in there? Because OCG structures, with it being more focused on the main card game, you have a lot of potential to seeing these newer archetypes and these newer sets in the actual game. And honestly, I do see that this could be a potential deck that's in the game, like in this OCG structures world. I feel like any new archetype has that potential. As for the person that would use this deck, I really have no idea, because I guess it depends on the character. The easy pick would be Shoma, but Shoma likes to just build decks, so I feel like this one just is a clear one. But I don't know really who else I could really think of that would use this Bearcti archetype. I feel like Shoma would try to use the best out of this in this whole condition-like thing, and I feel like with his whole personality, this new way to play Synchro Summon, I think he would absolutely love it, and I feel like this would be a deck he would use. Also, I feel like if you went into the structure world for this card, I feel like you would just appear in Antarctica, but it's more like a teched out Antarctica. I think it would be really cool if they showed something like that, but I have no really idea if they're going to do that or not. Currently, of the time of this recording, they actually have not done anything past chapter 13, which obviously that's because of coronavirus. That's the same thing with the Sevens manga. That has not continued since chapter 1, or at least the site that I've been using has not upgraded to that yet. I've heard rumors that said chapter 2 is out, but I've looked all over the internet and it's not out, so I don't know where people are getting that from. But when the OCG structures come back and they get up to this point, because I feel like they will still try to go with the packs that they were originally going up to. I feel like if we're going to see this archetype, it's probably going to be up close to the chapter 30 of the manga. I feel like it's going to be any place that they're going to really do it. But I still think this would be a pretty cool archetype to see in, and I think Shoma would really fit pretty well with this deck, I feel like, which he honestly fits with any new deck. But let me know if you guys think of any other characters. And The only other character I can really see is a new character that was not introduced up to the point of where I've read so far, because I've only read up, like I said before, to chapter 9. I haven't read chapter 10 yet. So maybe there was a new character that was introduced that I do not know of. So maybe a new character can probably use this archetype, but just based off of what the knowledge I know, Shoma is the one that makes the most sense. But that's something I want you guys to discuss down in the comment section below on what characters do you think might use this archetype. But guys, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a little bit different than I normally do, but I had a blast talking about this archetype. I have never been enticed to read about archetype more than this one. This is probably one of the coolest archetypes that I think. This reminds me a lot of how dark synchro monsters work as well. I didn't even mention that in the video because they had the whole thing of looking at it almost is like subtracting in a way, because how dark synchro monsters work is you subtract the monster's level and you would end up getting a negative level, because the system of how synchro summoning works is non-tuner plus tuner monster. Even though the effect is one tuner plus one non-tuner, the way that it has been portrayed, it's not the case. It's switched. It goes non-tuner, tuner, then the equal level. And we even see this in the anime. They've done it numerous times, especially through seasons 3 through 5, when they would actually show like the adding of the monsters' levels. They always went non-tuner, tuner, then total monsters. And that's how dark synchro monsters work. So you do monster minus tuner monster equals level. So I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. The only difference is this archetype more strict on difference, while there's actually you're actually subtracting the levels of the monsters to get your dark synchro monster on the field. So there is some good differences, but they're pretty similar to some degree. But I really do like this archetype. I hope this does really well. I love the monsters designs. I think they look really cool. And hopefully they get some cooler support. I don't think they're going to get any more support in this Ancient Guardians deck build sets, but it would be cool to see them in future packs get newer support. But guys, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.